Hey, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another OSR Tabletop live stream with DM Bluddworth. So as you can see, I am going to just be freewheeling it a little bit today. I will talk about Honor Among Thieves now that it's past its second weekend. I will talk a little bit about the Super Mario Brothers movies and kind of do a comparison between the two. I have not yet seen Super Mario Brothers, but it's certainly on my radar to go check it out. That way, I can do a more fair comparison between the two movies, and I think that there is a comparison to be made between those two movies because they're both essentially the same genre, with the exception that Super Mario Brothers is a cartoon and the D&D Honor Among Thieves is obviously not. It's a live action, but all of their other descriptors were nearly identical. So really good to do that comparison, especially since there was talk of D&D Honor Among Thieves being the launch of a cinematic universe, and it really does appear that Nintendo might be the next big cinematic universe, especially with some of the long-standing titles that they do have that have almost consistently been more popular, in a general sense than D&D had been, or even to this day still, and the numbers will bear that out as well. If you've been following my channel, you've seen that I've been having some difficulty with posting videos up. I don't know what changed on either on my end or on YouTube's end, but I have one particular video on half elves in Castles and Crusades, and I was trying to piggyback off of the big brouhaha with with half elves and half orcs, or any of the half species or races, coming out of the comment that Jeremy Crawford made, where he said essentially they're going to remove half races from Dungeons and Dragons because they are inherently racist. The idea of half races is inherently racist, and obviously, I believe as of either this morning or sometime yesterday, Dungeons and Dragons on Twitter came out and they're attempting to walk that back, obviously, without saying, well, Jeremy Crawford misspoke, or this is not the direction that the game is going to go in. I mean, I don't anticipate that they would ever come out and just say, you know what, we're just going to keep Jeremy Crawford away from the cameras and away from Twitter, because he seems to drop these misguided ideas quite often. So, I mean, that would probably be the best thing that they could do, is start to take, some of these companies have to start to take a look at their executives and their, even their creative people or their marketing people, and say, nah, we want you behind the scenes, but we don't want you making statements, out there. I mean, look at what's going on with Bud Light. I think they've lost about $4 billion in stock value in like 2 days. It literally is, or during the 2 day span of like March 31st and April 1st, or whatever it was. Yeah, I mean, and I've actually saw either a tweet or a YouTube video, which I didn't watch to its entirety, that said that that particular vice president, she was fired already, because she only had one job to do. And, very, very similar to Jeremy Crawford. He basically has one job to do, and that's to, guide Dungeons and Dragons to a place where it's actually advancing the game. And if you can't manage to do that, then maybe it's time to keep him in the cellar and just let him do whatever he's going to do behind the scenes, and not do interviews, or not because they never walk back their misstatements either, which is another thing that's kind of a plague that they've seemed to be suffering from, going back even to the OGL crisis, and trying to say that the OGL 1.1 was a draft, and it wasn't meant for release, and that was just an opportunity to make modification. I mean, just like as if we're completely ignorant of what they were looking to do, and they got caught. They got caught with their hand in the proverbial cookie jar, basically trying to steal people's content, and and then deny them access to their own content that they created. But anyway, let's talk a little bit about the movie, and I am going to I'm going to show you the numbers, and if you want to join in the chat, I will put up the invite if you want to actually come into the channel and talk, especially if you've seen the movie, as I have, and so you're welcome to come in. I am putting the link up right now, and I know this was kind of short notice video, only about a 2-hour notice. And that's because I've been messing around so much with trying to clear up that issue with, that one video I'm trying to put up there, the half elves video that, I'll see. I'm waiting to hear back from YouTube on that. But there's the link. So if you want to actually join in on the, on the discussion, you're certainly welcome to do so. And in the meantime, I am going to I'm going to share these tabs here. So we're going to take a look at Honor Among Thieves, and here we go. So I am now sharing this, and let me just double back and make sure that you can see it. So this is basically after 2 weekends and a couple of days. All right, so here is Super Mario Brothers, and that's Super Mario Brothers. Here is, I want to do Dungeons and Dragons first, and let me double check to make sure that I am in the right screen here. Yes. So, and I'm not quite sure how to make this any larger for you to see it, more clearly. If somebody wants to jot that in the channel, that would be great. If you know a way of making this larger, yeah, I would certainly appreciate that. Let's see. Let's go to my channel, and I can monitor this live. Let's go to my and turn down that, and I'll look for messages. All right, so there's the live chat. All right, so total domestic gross, $61,658,546. It is roughly 49.9%, which is really interesting. It truly is an American game. All right, so D&D is an American game. It's an American franchise, and yet it was slightly undersold here in the United States as it was in its global market. Globally, it was 50.1%. I know they're statistically a tie, right? 61,800,000 for a total of 123,458, 546. All right, so $123 million. Let's say it's $123.5 million, and the movie cost. Excuse me. The movie cost $150 million to make it, And typically it's the same amount to market something. So let's say it's another $150 million to market. And so this was a $300 million investment. And in order for the shareholders to be happy with the outcome, typically movies have to make 3 times the amount it cost for them to make the movie itself. Preferably twice as much as the combined making the movie and advertising the movie. So this is falling short, and its numbers, as you will see, are declining as of Sunday. All right. On Sunday, the movie lost, compared to last Sunday, the previous Sunday, 63%. All right. Year to date, it's a minus 42% overall. Sunday, April 9th, Honor Among Thieves, domestically, only made $3 million. Let's see, domestic weekly, domestic all-time ranking. No, I'm just going to do this. So domestic daily, here is the domestic daily. And you can see it's declining. It's not going to bounce back and all of a sudden get a second surge, because, and now I'll bring in the Super Mario Brothers. Now here is Super Mario Brothers. Its first weekend, really mostly April 5th, and then it's it's April 5th, and then the 6th and the 7th are tied into here. But its first day return was $146 million. All right. And gross overall was 204 domestically. So it made $146 million in day one domestically. All right. Worldwide total, this movie made $375 million, almost $375.6 million. And this movie only cost $100 million to make. I know that sounds crazy to say only, but it cost $100 million to make. And it is, I'm probably not showing you the right screen here. Nope, you're still seeing Dungeons and Dragons. So let me remove this one. And let me remove that one, and I'm going to put up the actual, let's present the screen. Let's bring up Super Mario Brothers. Sorry about that. It's a, so now let me double check and make sure I'm doing this right. So now you're looking at Super Mario Brothers. Sorry about that. Didn't realize that. I thought it would follow when I switch screens, but no, you actually have to pre-do that. So $204.6 million domestically, which is 54% of the market. And then internationally, it made 170 million, almost 171 million. That's 45% of the market. Now, this is an international property, right? So this is, this is a Nintendo property, and yet it did better domestically in the United States. And you make that comparison to Dungeons and Dragons, it just doesn't make sense, right? This should have done better in its global market than in the United States, and yet it didn't. It did better in the United States. That goes to show you that it's not the genre of movie that that's attracting the American audience, because the genre in the movies, in the comparison between the two, are virtually the same. They're both adventure, comedy, fantasy, sci-fi movies. Now, the difference here is that Super Mario Brothers has two other distinctions: animation and family. Let me see if they had family in here. So this is just action, adventure, comedy, and fantasy. So um, the family part obviously is going to bring in more people, right? They're going to feel comfortable bringing their children in. But Honor Among Thieves was marketed as as something that was, certainly not, uh, certainly not even a PG-13 movie. And I will double check that, but um, I don't believe it was rated PG-13. I could be wrong, and correct me if I am wrong, but you know, that's the that's the real gist between the two. I mean, if you look at them, and you will see that these these two movies are virtual same kind of competition with one another, obviously, uh, almost completely the same kind of movie, and appealing to the same kind of audience as well. I mean, D&D Honor Among Thieves might have been slated a little bit higher in age group, but it just fell short. It fell really, really short. And so that's the question that I don't think that Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast, or even Paramount, is really going to tackle. And that is, the question is that, how did they go wrong? Where was the missteps in what they put together here? And I mean, I just have it here. So the roadmap to failure, and I'm going to give what in my opinion is the roadmap to failure here. Um, it didn't start with the OGL crisis. I know some people out there might say it was, an OGL crisis type of an issue, and that's what drove it. And it was, Now this movie was in trouble back in the summertime, long before the OGL crisis began. I really think it started when, with the first trailer dropped. And, with that first trailer drop, and I do have a comment here. So it is definitely PG-13. So, and it probably is in the United States as well. So thank you for that correction. Um, I seriously doubt that Super Mario Brothers is Super Mario Brothers rated G? That's the next question is it rated G or is it PG? Um, if it's saying family, it's probably rated G. Um, but not sure. This Box Office Mojo doesn't really tell me what the movie stats themselves are. But anyway, um, that I can look at really quickly afterwards. Anyhow, so yeah, Honor Among Thieves. I think that it really started to show its issues back in the summertime, or at least as soon as that first trailer dropped, and once we saw, who the maybe even prior to that, when we saw the actors that were going to be in this movie, and we can kind of see the writing on the wall. Um, Chris Pine is not a big draw. Let's be honest here, and and Hugh Grant hasn't been a big draw to movies in probably 2 decades. And Michelle Rodriguez, she's always she's never a lead actress. She's always kind of in the background, and she's been in huge franchises, and she's a likable, interviewee and a likable character in the movies that she's in. But Michelle Rodriguez is Michelle Rodriguez. No one goes out to see a Michelle Rodriguez movie. All right, and so just from casting right from the start, there was no one that was going to bring in huge crowds. Second thing was that they had these silly missteps. I mean, no matter what people want to say now, in hindsight, the owl bear issue was something that was immediately brought up as being, a problem for the movie. It's like if you're making a movie that is based on a game, then there are certain rules of the game that shouldn't be broken. And that was clearly one of them, because it received a huge amount of criticism there. Then there was the movie poster, the promotional poster that had the wrong kind of an intellect devourer. They took the art from Pathfinder and was using that on there, and that just sent the message that they either weren't that concerned about being aligned with the game, which to a certain extent I understand. They can't be, lockstep with the game, but you know, to be drawing upon your chief competitors, artwork in order to put it on there. I mean, that's just a self-inflicted wound, that was just completely unnecessary, and it just showed a level of either lack of interest or disrespect the for the core of the movie itself, or just an incompetence. I mean, just not vetting what you're putting into your initial promo materials. You know, I thought that the first interview, the first cast interview was, in my mind, it was a disaster. I really felt that the only one that was enthusiastic about this movie was Michelle Rodriguez. Everybody else was kind of like blasé about it, or completely silent during that video. And the impression that I got from Chris Pine was that this was a paycheck and I'm done. And Hugh Grant was more in the lines of, oh my God, this is where my career has brought me to. The decline of his career has brought him to. So that wasn't very good as well. Then shortly around that same time or slightly thereafter, Hasbro announced that they were trying to sell Entertainment One. So the movie hadn't even been released yet, and they're looking to offload the production company for for the movie itself. That's not a good sign. All right, that's almost like an admission that, yeah, we know we're selling a turd here, or trying to sell a turd here, and then they changed the release date. Then the OGL happened. All right, and I believe they pushed back the movie again. All right, to try to get it further away from the OGL crisis. And then Kyle Brink comes out and says, the white males can't leave this hobby fast enough, and I just don't understand, and that's very similar to what you're seeing with Bud Light right now. Is like, you need to recognize that the majority of your consumer base is either simply males, or it is specifically white males, especially in the United States. It's something like 60% of your consumer base. Now, that's not to say that you ignore your other 40%. No, you can't afford to do that either. But you shouldn't be sitting there shitting on your primary consumer. And again, that's what you saw most egregiously done by Bud Light and the vice president of Bud Light. And they're paying very dearly. And I think that all of these missteps and just out of touch things that Wizards of the Coast, or Hasbro, I think more so, just ultimately made them pay the price. They basically sabotaged their own movie over the past 6 months, practically. and that's or even over 6 months, and that's why this movie failed. Now, on top of that, you have something like an absolute juggernaut of of Super Mario Brothers come out. Um, John Wick 4 still surpassed what its expectations were, and it certainly surpassed Dungeons and Dragons and has more legs to it than Dungeons and Dragons does. But even in its underperformance, I think, in comparison, um, it's still beat out D&D. Maybe not on the first opening night, but it's the fourth movie in a series as well. And like I said, I think that it will have more legs than what this does. I'd actually be able to pull up that graphic and take a look at it as well. I should have thought of doing that beforehand. So this is, to me, this is just a sign of an overall pushback on these big corporations pushing, whether you want to call it the woke agenda or, I think it's more so just openly disrespecting their consumer base, and not wanting to admit or even recognize what the majority of their consumer base is why that these ventures are failing, and they're failing hard. Now, there's been at least one individual that I know of, that was like, oh, the Dungeons and Dragons cinematic universe is going to be a multi-billion-dollar thing. No, this probably killed that. I don't see unless I don't see unless they put it on streaming very soon, for them to recoup their money back and to appease their shareholders. I think that their shareholders are going to look at this and say, "Listen, movies is not the way to go with Dungeons and Dragons as a franchise. It's just not. It's never going to attract. It's niche. It's always going to be niche. You're not going to make this a life brand. I mean, that's just the most bizarre thing that I think that they could think of, is that this would be a life brand, in comparison to like Harley Davidson or something. It's just bizarre that they would come to that belief that it would be as such. So it's going to be an interesting thing. I am going to see the Mario Brothers movie, and see how that compares. Now that I've seen, I saw Honor Among Thieves back on March 19th, and it was better than I thought, but that's only because they really made me think that it was going to be an absolute dumpster fire, and the fact that it wasn't a dumpster fire isn't really saying very much, so that once I walked out of there, I was like, well, that wasn't actually half as bad as I thought it was going to be. And I thought it was actually a slightly better than average movie. Now, to me, average is like a 70, and I thought it was slightly better than a 7 out of 10, but certainly not an 8 out of 10. And after thinking about it a little bit and listening to others and their comments and the things that they've pointed out, and then really one question one of my commenters actually asked me a couple weeks ago, probably about 2 weeks ago. Think about your favorite sword and sorcery movie or whatever, and then compare it or match it up with Honor Among Thieves, and where do you think it is now? And that immediately took me out of the the 7 or 8 where I normally, where I initially had it, and brought me right down to, oh, it's easily a 7.0, and not higher than that. And I can actually see that, over time, it'll slowly still continue to lose more and more with me as my memory of this movie fades very quickly, because it was not a very memorable movie. Um, I came out of the movie theater and there were no wow moments in the movie theater. There was nothing that was incredibly shocking or super funny or emotional, driving or anything like that. I mean, even even the brief character death, and that's how I describe it. The very brief character death, at the very end, was immediately resolved, within 30 seconds. So didn't even give you the time for it to settle in before it's like, hey, I got this thing that we can just bring her right back again, and it was a nothing. You took what could have been a very poignant and somber moment, and boop, it was like, all right, it's fixed, and that's the most terrible ending they could have possibly have done in the movie. So it's just, it was just a mess. In hindsight, it was certainly a mess. And I don't think that their shareholders are looking at this and saying, "Oh yeah, we're going to back you to do another one of these things again." So um, I think that ultimately the failure of this movie is going to be better for Dungeons and Dragons going forward than if it was marginally more successful. I think that would have really been a detriment to the game, because then they would have felt like, oh, you see, we could, this is where people want it to go, and go further in that direction. Hopefully this is a wake up call for them to say, hey, you know what, we're going to back off. Hopefully Hasbro takes a look at Anheuser-Busch and sees, like, holy cow, I mean, we can't afford to lose $4 billion in 2 days. They certainly can't. I mean, they're already down. Hasbro's down something like almost 60% in a year of their total value, or slightly above. I'm sorry, 53% for the year. They're down 53% for the year, and since December, which included, this movie is going to be released. There was all kinds of new things that are supposed to come out and really drive the brand forward. So really, ever since December, it's been an absolute mess for them. So yeah, I anticipate this. I anticipate this to have significant ramifications in where Wizards of the Coast or Hasbro goes moving forward. Their influencer convention that they had, over the weekend, or I believe it was on the 4th or something. So that didn't go over well either. I mean, many of the things in that showed that it was a disaster. I think that it was an unmitigated disaster, and there are plenty of people out there that are saying the same thing. Some of the questions were ridiculous, and they shouldn't have spent any time with them. So those demands for mental health assistance for for content creators on YouTube, it's like, no, nobody held a gun to your head for you to shill for Wizards of the Coast in the hopes that they would recognize your shilling for them, and Probably that's why you were invited to begin with. And then you can't turn around and then complain, oh, well, you know what? I was shilling for you and now I'm getting all kinds of grief for it. You chose to do it. And if bad tweets and comments in your comments section is something that's going to give you mental stress, then maybe the internet's not for you. And so you had that group there, but you had some like really important questions asked, based on like the VTT, where people, very, significantly pointed out. We noticed that every laptop that you're using is an Alienware laptop. I mean, those laptops run, $2,000 plus, and they were like, are you not basically, I mean, they used equity, which is another nonsense term, but it certainly is gatekeeping, to the extent that you're going to price a good portion of your player base out of that. If that's the requirement for it, you need a top of the line computer to run it. You're not going to bring enough people to it anyway. So and then there was other concerns with it. I honestly thought that the VTT looked like crap. I don't mean visually I just thought that the way the game mechanics looked like it was going, that to me just looked, it was not quite a virtual tabletop, where it's okay for it to look kind of rudimentary and cheesy and stuff, because I'm not looking to, the action is taking place in our imaginations and looking at each other's faces and reactions. We're not buried, even if we're online, where we're talking to each other, we're looking at each other, or we're looking at the what's going on the map or the graphic or whatever. We don't have our faces glued in a screen, and letting that action play out on the screen as you're playing your characters and you're hitting buttons and such. It just looked terrible. And again, my opinion, but to me, that's not something I would pay $15-20 a month. You either make it a full-blown video game, or you just stick to putting out books and putting out a tabletop product. Not that in between thing, that really doesn't capture the essence of doing either very well. So that's kind of where I left off with that. I was like, that's not anything that I would certainly look to move to, without a doubt. And I'd rather look at other products than that. So let's see if any others want to pop in. I have the link is above if you want to join in, and especially if you've seen either of the two movies. Like if you've seen Super Mario, that would be awesome too, to hear what you thought about it. And but if you saw Honor Among Thieves, or if if you had any other comments about what's going on with the tabletop role-playing hobby. And in the meantime, I will start talking about some of the things that I am personally working on the channel. So I will go back to taking off this comment here and take off this here and just go back to that. So as I said earlier on in this video, I've been having some issues with posting videos, and I've been struggling to post up the half-elf video that I was doing, where I'm preparing for a Castles and Crusades campaign, which I am going to start sometime in September. And this big brouhaha came up over the, Jeremy Crawford's, half elf comments and or half race, whichever, race he's talking about, half elves, half orcs, and any of the others that incorporate the term half with them. I don't know if that would extend to halflings as well. I'm sure that somebody would say, "Oh, that's derogatory. It's making fun of their size." But I've been having trouble with getting that particular video up there, and so I've done a couple test videos and trying to get that done. I'm still continuing my journey through both the character classes of Castles and Crusades and then the character races of Castles and Crusades as soon as I get the video things sorted out so that I can upload those and continue that. I will be working on the next class is going to be the Bard, which will hopefully launch at 6 a.m. on Thursday morning. So it's every Tuesday and Thursday. I am doing a class feature, and then sporadically throughout the rest of those days of the week, I will be putting up these racial focus, character race focuses for Castles and Crusades as well. The first being the half elf, the second will be the half orc, and then I will go back to alphabetical order. The elf, I just blew up my alphabetical order. Elf, dwarf, elf, gnome, halfling, and then any others that I'm missing, human, obviously, and get those done as well. So no, I know this was like kind of an impromptu thing, and I see that there are still 5 people watching along. So I'm going to wrap this up in a few minutes. If anybody has any comments that they want to put out there, and I'll be curious to see how this uploads onto onto YouTube as well. See if that problem is hitting live streaming as well. So waiting to see how that works out. But if no one has anything else to add, this was just a real quick impromptu live stream to basically test it out and to talk a little bit about what I thought about Honor Among Thieves and how it's doing compared to Super Mario Brothers, or I will add in that John Wick. John Wick was another movie that I thought about seeing. So let's see. I want to take a quick look at their numbers. So Box Office Mojo. I will do this real fast. Let's see. So Box Office Mojo has, and let's see, we can do this comparison really fast. So let's do present, let's share screen, and we're going to do, there we go. So this one here, so 146 domestically, 54.6%. And then internationally, another 122 for a total of 268, 933. So as I predicted, it's going to have more legs than Dungeons and Dragons. It came out at 29. Remember, Dungeons and Dragons, they listed it as coming out higher than this, but it really had 5 million from, I mean, it still did better, but it had 5 million coming from that that March 19th date as well. And so it had that bit of an advantage. They were actually closer than what they actually seen. All right. So making 29, then 25. Then it dropped off to 18, 5, 6, 4 Wednesday. Not too many people go to the movies on Wednesday. Let's see. It's next Saturday. It jumped back up to 12. So it's showing you the 100% increase from here to here, 56% from here to here. Then Sunday it dropped off again. Monday, Tuesday. I guess Tuesday is a big day for movies. It's kind of weird, but it jumped from Monday to Tuesday, 26%, almost 27% increase. Then Wednesday dropped down. Still pulled in on a Saturday of 5.9 million, although it's 51% lower than the first Saturday, or even the second Saturday, actually. But overall, as I suspected, it was going to have more legs than the other movies. So I'm going to leave it there. And thanks for those of you that popped in. Thank you, Authoritative News Network, for pointing out that it was PG-13, in fact, and I will double check and see what the Super Mario Brothers, probably G. Maybe it's PG. I'm not quite sure, but I will double check and see how that came out, and I'll leave that in the comments section as well. So you all have a great afternoon, and stay safe out there. I look forward to seeing you on a gaming screen sometime soon. And just keep on gaming, keep on watching the movies that will drive our hobby, forward. I know people are talking about Nintendo being the next cinematic universe, and hopefully they convert some of these things. I've always thought that some of these franchises would actually work out pretty decent with a tabletop role-playing game. I mean, Legend of Zelda is kind of built for it, right? And or any of those things. I don't know if Super Mario or Mario Kart or Donkey Kong or whatever would make it into a tabletop role-playing game type of thing, but some of their others certainly would. So thanks for joining. Have a great day.